Hello friend, welcome back. In our previous video, we successfully configured our MySql database with our Django project, right? So now I want to migrate it. So in our first application, if you go to that models, I have already created two of this table class, one of the musician, another is the album. And for the musician, I have also defined some of the field. So they have the three field as a first name, last name, and the instrument. And also I have created another table class as a album. So that is our album. Into this album I have defined that four field. One is the artist, name, the release date, and also the number of stars, right? And also here I define one of the artist. Here I define of the foreign key in our musician class. That means in particular that position I have defined as a foreign key one of the field. And before we use it in our SQLite, right? So right now I am actually changed it. So right now I am working with our MySql for the reasons before all that our data. That means here I have saved some of the data in our musician table. I have saved some of the data in our albums table. So right now before all that our SQLite data is now totally gone. So our previous data is totally clean, and now I want to actually first of all migrate it. So if you want to migrate it, I think you already know about it. I have already discussed about that things with you. So friend, I have already shared some of the all that basic. So now together all that basic we will create one of the code application. I hope it should be very much clear to you for a better understanding how Django actually works. So for doing this, I just open our terminal. Into the terminal, that is our project directory as my first project directory. That means here, right? So in particular that area, first of all we have to define as a Python or py, whatever you write. So I just simply define as a py and the manage.py and then our migrate. So I just simply define as a migrate. So first of all we have to migrate it, and before migrate make that sure you save your all the data. So I just save it, and now I want to define as a Python or py and the manage.py and the migrate. Now click as a enter. So now it's automatically created all that related database, and also it's migrated in our database table. And after that we have to run our second command, where our second command was actually py and the manage.py and then make migrations, right? Make migration and our application folder name, that is our application name as a fast app. So I just simply define as a fast underscore app. So here you have to run our second command as a manage make migrations and then our fast, that means fast app, right? So now click as a enter. Perfect. And after that we have to migrate it again. So I just simply define again as a that is actually again this py and the manage and the migrate. Now click as a enter. Now you can see everything is perfect. So now if you go to our database, and now here if you refresh it, yes, now you can see friend, now it's automatically created all the default database table. And also I have created two of this database table. One is the fast app as an album, and that is our fast app as a musician. So if you open it, now you can see they have no data. So our all the previous data is totally clean. And here for our musician table, I have defined three of this field as a first name, there is a last name, and the instrument. Okay, so here if you now compare it, so with our model, so into this model here you can see there is actually our musician table. I have defined the three of this field. So now that is actually the three of this field. And also there is another table I have created as an album. And into the album here you can see that is the name, that is our release date, number of stars, and that is our artist ID. And here one thing friend I want to share with you. I have already discussed about that things with you. Here you can see I didn't define any ID. So as I told you before, by default it will be created one of the ID. Okay, so here you can see I didn't define any ID, but it's automatically created one of the ID field. So that is actually our primary ID. If you go in musician, you can see automatically it's created one of the primary key as a ID. If you go to the structure, into the structure you can see there is actually the primary ID. So for the reasons here, as I told you, you don't need to create any field for this one. Automatically it will be created. And also here I define one of the foreign key. I define one of the foreign key for this artist table. That means artist field. Into this artist field, I have defined one of the foreign key in our musician. By default, automatically now it's created. Like if you go our album, into the album, if you go to that structure, here you can see it's automatically defined our one of the ID, that means the artist ID. So that is the one of the primary key is automatically created. That means this artist ID. So this ID will be match actually our foreign key of our musician table with this ID. Okay. So they have the foreign key I have defined. Now it's perfectly getting this. I hope it's very much clear to you right now. And here also I define our table name, that means our table class name as a musician and the album. But here if you go to our database, into the database, by default it's created one of the name as a fast application name. That means first of all it's adding our fast application name and then our album name. That means our table name, right? So if you want to change it, then you can also change it. Then you have to go to your models, into these models. That means here, okay, so like after that, I want to define one of the meta class. So here you have to define as a class, and here I just define as a meta. As I told you before, meta is the if you want to put some of the class inside to the another class, then you have to define as a meta class. Okay, so into this meta class here you have to defining it. Like here I have defined as a db underscore table. I want to change that name. I want to make that name as a just album. Okay, I just name it just album. So if you want to actually rename your database field name, that means if you want to rename this database table field name, then you can change it with this meta class. Okay, with this meta class here you have to define your db table, and now whatever the name you want to define for a specific this class name, that means a specific this table name, then you can define that things on here. So if you want to apply it, I show you. Like here you have to save all. So as I told you before, whatever the things you will update in particular that position, after that we have to run 3 of this command. That means first of all we have to run our manage.py.migrate, click on the enter, and then you have to define as a another one as a py and the manage py and the make migrations and our fast step. Now click as a enter. And after that, you can see it's now showing as a rename table for the album to albums. Okay, so it's automatically now rename it, and now we have to migrate it again. So I just using our keyboard up key. So if you use it, automatically it will be getting our previous all that command. So now I just simply define as a py, manage py, and the migrate again. Click on the enter. So now it's perfectly updated. And now if you go to your database, click as a before that was actually fast underscore app underscore album. So now I just change it. Click on the structure. Yeah, you can see now it's become changed. So now it's by default it's now showing our this field, every field as appropriately same, but only our database table name is become changed. So here I define as a album. So here I have defined that as in our meta class as an album. So now this table name is visible. So if you want to change it, then you can change it like that way. Okay, so right now it's okay with me. I want to make the things as a previous one. That means the default one. So I just simply defining it. Again, click on the save all. And now I have to run our this command again. That means the 3 command, php manage py fast. And then we have to run our migrations. Okay, migrations, our fast tab. And then also we have to run again the migrate. Yeah, perfect. So now go here, refresh it again. You can see it's now become changed again as a fast tab underscore album. I hope you can well understand about it. And also here that is our authenticated user, right? So friend, before I have already created one of the authentication user, but right now you can see it's totally gone, because here when you actually updated it, by default everything will be clean. Like I show you, like here if you want to access our Django admin panel, like that is actually the Django admin. So here we have to run our site. So I just cut it. I want to add a new terminal, and here first of all we have to run our server as a Python, and then our manage.py, and then run server. Click on the enter. Our server is now running, and now if you go here, you can see it's now perfectly updated. But before, I have used one of the username as a Amjad J, right? So Amjad, and also I defined some of the password. But if you now click on the logging, you can see it's not actually recognize your name and the password. Because of all, in our database is totally clean. So for the reasons, we have to create another super user. Okay, so we have to create another super user. So if you want to create it, I think you already know about it, how can create it. So like here, I want to open our new again, another terminal. And here, first of all, if you want to create another super admin, then you have to define as a py or the Python and the manage.py and then create super user, right? So that is actually our command as a py, manage py, and the create and the super and user. Perfect. So now I want to create another super user. Click on the enter. Now you can see it's now showing as a name as a Amjad. So right now it's okay with me. So better I just simply copy it. I want to make the things on here. So that is our username. And now also if you click as a enter, and also we have to define our email address. So I just name it is Aryan or admin, better admin@gmail.com. Okay, better I just save it also. I just save it. And also if you now click as enter, then it will be asked for your password. So I just use the password again as udemy12345, and also after that I define another one as udemy12345. that is just to confirm again. It's not match, maybe I defined something wrong, as udemy12345, udemy12345. Click on the enter. Yeah, you can see our super user created successfully. So now our super user is now created, and also I run our server. Our server is now running. So now let's check this out. If we now refresh it, yeah, you can see now we actually successfully logged in. So if you now click the logout, and if you now go to our logging again, and here our username, so our username actually previous one just like that, same as Amjad, and also I define the password as udemy2345. okay, so that is actually our username. So I just simply define that username, and then the password, I just simply define that password. Click as a login. Yeah, we can see it's successfully logged in. So if you go to our musicians right now, you can see they have no data as a musician. And as I told you, when you update your server, that is MySql server, our previous all the data is totally now gone. So if you want to add some of the musician data, like there is our musician data, I just want to add some of the data as a first name. I just name it as a Aryan or Kazi, and then Aryan, and I just put instrument as a guitar. Okay, I just simply define as a guitar. Now click as a save. Yeah, you can see it's now data is now perfectly saved. And now if you go to our database, and here if you go to our musician, yeah, you can see that the ID is by default automatically is getting one of the ID, and there is a first name, last name, and our instrument. And also I have created one of the super user. Now if you go to that our authenticated user, yes, you can see that is the password, that is our last logging time and date, and that is our username is visible, email address is also visible. Perfect. I hope, friend, everything is very much clear to you. So in our next video, we'll create some of the template for our this album and the musician page, and also we'll create some of the view page for this one. Okay, so how can do that work? In our next video, I will show you that things with a live example. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.